At the back of that story, there are certain questions that need to be asked. Is there an urgent need now for gender sensitization where the judiciary is concerned? Is there clearly, which is an underrepresentation of women in courts, and is that somewhere down the line affecting gender justice? Holding judges accountable, not undermining judiciary, but strengthening it. Let's take these questions right now to our guest this evening, Karuna Nandi, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, joining us, as well as Brinda Dige, women rights activist. Karuna Nandi, with what, the kind of uproar we've seen at the back of the story, what is the way out? Because it's a little baffling where you snap the pajama string, even that doesn't constitute attempt to rape. Then what constitutes attempt to rape? Are we, who are laymen when it comes down to legal jargon, somewhere down the line missing the interpretation of rape? Or truly, did the High Court judge interpret attempt to rape in a very bizarre fashion?
If you drag a child into a culvert and you grab her breasts and take her pajama drawstring off, before even beginning the trial, to say that this was not an attempt to rape is frankly bizarre. But I also want to point out a number of other problems with this judgment. If you look at the language and the mixture of Hindi and English, and it's in some places, impossible to understand what the judge is trying to say, then that, just for lack of clarity, is a real problem. But a much bigger problem is the fact that the judge failed to notice that due to the fact that this is a sexual crime and covered by the by the IPC section 166A, which says that you have to register an FIR in such a case, that it can't be a complaint case, right? And allowed it to proceed as a complaint case is a travesty. Because the reason that provision is there is because in a complaint case, it's just up to in this case, the mother and the child to bring all the evidence and to persuade the court that this crime actually happened. In such sexual crimes, the police, on pain of being prosecuted themselves, are required to register the FIR. And the reason is this, because it is a crime against the state. When there is a rapist or an attempted rapist or any other, this kind of sexual crime, then the police has to investigate and find out what actually happened, rather than just going on what having the victim trying to gather all the evidence together, rather than just the onus only being go and complain to the state, right? So this judgment is a travesty in multiple ways, and most prominently in attempting to set precedent that when in such facts that it could not be an attempt to rape, when the existence of intention, etc., would be a matter of trial. Why didn't he just let it go to trial? This is a bad judgment. We need strong action in such cases, and I hope it follows.
Brinda Dige, I want to get you in, and it's a question I'd like to ask Karuna Nandi as well, because we just want to give out some details in terms of gender representation when it comes down to the Indian judiciary. Till now, there have only been 11 women judges. We're going to put those graphics out, and I would think that in itself is appalling, and possibly that's why gender justice also suffers. Not that men can't deliver gender justice, but to have just more women in the mix, would make a huge difference. We're going to put that graphic out right away. But Brinda Dige, will it also paramount, to getting more women in the Indian judiciary?
Yes,
can we get the graphic out first? Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah. So, Preeti, that is very, very important that they have 50% or more women in the judiciary at all levels. We are looking at not only judges and magistrates, but also at the prosecution level and at every other level. But that said, let us place on record that we have also found some women judges who've come up there making bizarre orders and judgments. The issue here is there is a law. And the law is to be understood by everybody in letter and spirit. And the matter comes before the court. Now, how can a judge decide, out of the blue, on his or her own that this doesn't constitute. There is a definition given. Now, you must at least follow with that definition. And of course, you can elaborate further on the definition if it is in the interest of the victim survivor and the case. But here, this judge has gone all out somewhere else. He has his own understanding. I just can't say it is simply patriarchal, but it goes beyond that, where he feels that the two perpetrators did all of these things. And in fact, in my Twitter also, I have asked, what would he do if this happened to a member of his family? What is it that is running through his mind when he gave a statement of that nature in various languages in that one sentence and that order itself? Did he even think that he is bringing culprits to justice or not? And like Madam Nandi pointed out, why haven't you allowed this to go to trial? Why haven't you allowed the police to do their investigation and present their forensic evidence over there? Why is all of the procedures not followed? Now, you can't be the one and only that yours is the final word. Follow the procedures. If you're not following the procedures, who are you accountable to? So the Constitution should not be respected at all. And the citizen who has brought the case forward should not be given any kind of justice as per the law. So this is not only about women coming there. We want a lot of women, but both men and women need to be trained. For some reason, judges think that they are beyond training. And that is the problem.
It's not just judges feel that they're beyond training. And Karuna Nandi, maybe you can, weigh in on this, because judges are, considered the holy grail. You really can't question them and what they say. And with what, many have even pointed out, especially on social media, because social media is abuzz with that, judges have been pulled up by the Supreme Court for far little. And this is huge. So what is it that you put a system in place where you don't see judgments like that?
There have been various attempts to put such systems in place. For example, you had the handbook that was issued by the Supreme Court. And so that's one attempt. Another attempt is where some of us have been invited, on various occasions by the National Judicial Academy and by the Delhi Judicial Academy to train judges. And, in such circumstances, for example, we give various scenarios, and the only difference is the interpretation of the consent. And sometimes we see varying answers, but after the workshop, there are sort of aha moments, and there's a kind of understanding of, and there's, everyone is much more on the same page in terms of how to interpret the law. I think at the very outset, when judges are appointed or promoted, I really wish that we had some kind of competence evaluation with regard to the protected category, how they deal with, because judges come from society, right? And law is a corrective in that sense. So if there is crime in society, there's huge prejudice, there's misogyny, there's casteism, there's communalism. The law and judges enforcing the law are meant to be a corrective for all of this. Now, if they don't correct for all of this, it's only going to make the coercion even much worse. So therefore, I wish that at the stage of appointing or promoting a person to the High Court, that there would be an interview and indeed a test to understand how is it that you apply the law. Do you think women tend to lie? Do you think that Dalit people don't deserve the protections that they have, for example, under the SC/ST Act, and therefore do you not apply that? Do you think that laws with regard to communalism should not be applied the way they is? Because the judge's job is really to apply the law and to interpret it in line with the Constitution. So I really think that these evaluations should happen, and these evaluations should happen from time to time. Okay. But let us not forget that there is a appeals process, and this, I really hope, will go up to the Supreme Court. And indeed, I do think that the Supreme Court should ideally take suo motu cognizance of this judgment, because it is egregious, and give at the very least,
Okay.
require this judge to go to training
All
again
right.
at the National
Because,
Judicial.
Brinda Diga, just going to get a quick word in, because it does seem somewhere down the line, gender justice repeatedly, especially because this is the High Court, the lower courts sometimes are far more appalling, is completely lost in the interpretation of the law.
You're absolutely right. It is lost in the interpretation of the law, but the interpretation must also be within the ambit of law. You can't simply interpret something out of the blue. That's what I said. It has to go beyond that law, which might have been, formulated 20, 30 years ago, and it today probably requires a little more understanding. Now, I would like to add to what Madam Nandi also pointed out, is that none of the judges have anything called as a performance evaluation based on the judgments that they give. It's all we speak about it and we crib about it and we are appalled about it, but that's it, because there's nothing at stake for them. Nothing. And so it is important that the Supreme Court also bring these things. They must be held accountable. Simple.
Fair point. We're going to leave it at that. I appreciate both of you for joining us, because I think it's time we really start questioning the kind of bizarre judgments, egregious, bizarre, appalling, whatever one might say, because there seems to be an apprehension in questioning it. Even in the morning when we were in the newsroom discussing the story, many of us like, but can you question this judgment? How much, where all can you go? What's the limit that you need to stop before you say anything where this judgment is concerned? But we leave it at that. Thank you for joining us.